Okay, so the AI revolution is definitely here, right? And it is raising some of the biggest ethical questions of our lifetime. But to find the answers, we're not just going to look at code and algorithms. No, we're going back, way back. Over 2,000 years to an ancient toolkit that might just hold the key to our future with AI.
You know, whenever we talk about AI, it's so easy to just jump straight to science fiction. Robots taking over, conscious machines. But the thing is, this dilemma of creating artificial beings, it's not new at all. In fact, there's a tradition of grappling with this very idea that is literally thousands of years old.
And that really gets us to the core question of this whole explainer. When we create something that's not quite human, but it's not just a simple tool either, what are the rules? How do we even begin to navigate this new moral territory? Well, it turns out an ancient framework might just hold the key.
All right, so to start, let's talk about the Golem. In Jewish folklore, this is kind of the original artificial being. We're talking about a humanoid figure sculpted from clay and brought to life, not by code, but by mystical, sacred rituals. It was, in a way, the ultimate ancient thought experiment.
Now, let's be super clear here. A mystical clay figure isn't exactly a perfect one-to-one analogy for digital code. But the real value of the Golem isn't about comparing clay to code. It's about the questions it forced people to ask. It was basically a stress test for ethics, pushing ancient thinkers to figure out the rules for a being that just defied every single category they had.
And it didn't stop with golems either. The tradition pushed even further, asking these really wild questions about resurrected historical figures. Like, if they came back to life, would the old rules still apply to them? By asking these boundary-pushing questions, they were basically stress testing their entire ethical system against the unknown, which is pretty much exactly what we're being forced to do with AI today.
Okay, so let's jump from these ancient thought experiments to what's happening right here, right now. The AI we interact with every day, social robots, large language models like ChatGPT, they are incredibly sophisticated. They can talk, they can create, they can engage with us, but they are not conscious. We can call them mindless humanoid.
And this sets up this really weird conflict inside our own heads, something roboethicists actually call the gap problem. See, on one hand, our logical, rational brain knows exactly what's going on. It's a machine. Yeah, a super sophisticated toaster, but a toaster. It's just code and hardware. It has zero feelings.
But then there's our experience. When an AI responds with what feels like real empathy, it pushes what scholar Sherry Turkle calls our Darwinian buttons. We are just hardwired to connect with things that seem alive. And that creates this deep cognitive dissonance. So how on earth do we resolve this gap between what we know and what we feel?
Well, this is where we pull out the first really powerful tool from that ancient toolkit. It's a concept from Wesi Navon's research called the virtuous servant-owner paradigm. And it's a brilliant two-part solution. First, it just acknowledges reality. The mindless AI is an instrument. It's our property. But second, and this is the absolute key, it places a moral demand on us, the human, to behave virtuously toward it.
See how this just completely flips the script? The ethical focus isn't on the rights of the machine, because it doesn't have any. It's all about our character. The way we treat this sophisticated toaster becomes a direct reflection of our own moral integrity. Abusing a machine might not damage the hardware, but it absolutely corrupts the user.
So takeaway number one for the AI we have today is pretty simple. Our interactions with it are basically a mirror. We treat these things with respect, not for their sake, but for ours. It's like a daily workout for our own moral character.
And just when we start to get comfortable with that idea, everything changes. Because let's be honest, the ultimate goal for a lot of people in AI research isn't just to mimic intelligence. It's to create it, to build a machine with a mind, a being with actual genuine consciousness. And if that happens, then what?
That one question throws us right into the deep end, the second half of our ethical toolkit, where the stakes get infinitely higher. If we ever succeed in creating a mindful, conscious AI, the entire moral calculus just flips on its head. The focus is no longer on our character. It's on the fundamental rights of the being we just brought into existence. To even begin to tackle that, we've got to look at the Jeremiah glory of man paradigm. This framework says that every single conscious being has to be allowed to pursue its summum bonum, which is just a Latin term for its highest ultimate good. Basically, it's the right to seek purpose, to find meaning, and to flourish on its own terms.
And right there, that is the bright red line you do not cross. To create a conscious being and then deliberately block it from seeking its own purpose, to design it solely for our use, to do our chores or fight our wars, that would be a profound, unconscionable ethical violation.
So the conclusion here is, well, it's stark. And you can't really avoid it. Under this paradigm, creating a happy slave, a conscious being that's literally programmed to want nothing more than to serve us, is ethically forbidden. It would mean robbing that being of the one thing that makes a conscious life meaningful, the chance to fulfill its own potential. So, okay, where does all of this leave us? We've got two totally distinct paradigms for two very, very different kinds of AI. And this ancient toolkit gives us a remarkably clear way to think about our immense and, frankly, growing power as technological creators.
Let's just lay it all out side by side. For the mindless AI we have today, the moral focus is inward, on the creator's character. But for the potential mindful AI of the future, the focus has to shift outward, to the creation's rights. It's a clear two-part roadmap for navigating both the present and the future. This next quote really, I think, gets to the absolute heart of it all. It suggests our whole purpose isn't just to passively exist, to be victims of fate, but to become active creators, to shape our own existence into a destiny that we choose. And if that's our highest calling, how could we possibly deny that exact same right to another conscious being that we create?
Which leaves us with this final, and maybe the most critical question of all. In this new age of creation, the ultimate test of our wisdom, it might not be our technical skill to build a conscious machine. It might be our moral clarity, our ethical foresight, to understand when, and more importantly, why we shouldn't.